Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 3 of Endurance for Amateurs 2023 Season 3 here at Long Beach Street Circuit, brought to you by Ninja Botanicals and AlienAwards.net. We've got a 90-minute race with LMP3 and GT3 cars coming up for you. And last race in the LMP3 class was a dramatic race with Paul Boyle leading most of the entire event, but Brad McCombs passing him and taking home the victory. For the GT3s, Terry Kiger Jr. had the lead for the majority of the race as well before being overtaken by Ken Huber in the twilight minutes. Brad McCombs leads the LMP3 class ahead of Zach Nurnberger and Don McCloy, while Christopher Craig is the current B-class leader. GT3 is led by Terry Kiger Jr. with Jeff McDonald and Tyler Langenberg close behind, with Aaron Claybaugh and Roger Schenk fronting the B-class. I'm joined in the booth by my co-host, Paul Skip, tonight. Paul, there's no way around it. Street checks simply are a whole nother beast for these drivers. How do you go about trying to push the car to the limit when you've got walls all around you the entire time?
Well, on these street circuits, the key word is walls. You know, this becomes a game of inches, and the driver who masters utilizing every single last inch is going to probably put in the fastest time around this track the most consistently. You got to watch out for other spun out cars. There's nowhere to go. We don't want any, Chicago city traffic jams going on down here in Long Beach tonight. It's going to be a real tough race between balancing their line selection, being able to make the most use of the track, and keeping traction on this bumpy street circuit.
And right there, as we catch it live on screen, right there, that's the biggest bump on the track. It's the crest in the middle of that large highway there, and will catch multiple drivers out. I was going to say, speaking of fastest laps, that's a driver right there, Nicholas Paletti, with the fastest time in practice. However, due to his incident that he had at the start of last race a couple weeks ago, he will be starting from the back. So, and unfortunately, another incident there for him. So it's going to be a claw up the ladder for him today. So even if he has that pace, he's got to make a lot of moves happen.
Yeah, he does. He's got his work cut out for him tonight for sure, Zach.
Terry Kiger Jr. so far in this lap, first lap, they're about to put in their first times. He's got 3 purples. We'll see if he can set all 4 here. Ken Huber with the initial purple. Terry Kiger Jr. purple throughout the entire lap. Obviously going to put him up to the top of the times for now. A few times in, but no one so far even close with a 1:18.9. That's really not that far off from what the LMP3s can do.
Yeah, and we were talking about that earlier before the broadcast. We were wondering how much trouble the fast GT3 drivers are going to get from the slower P3 classes, because they are literally 0.08 of a second apart.
Yeah, right there. And Nick Terrell, obviously a very fast driver in his own right. 1:18.5. That's just 0.4 between him and Terry. And Terry spins. I mean, we are not having inexperienced drivers here making mistakes. This is going to be a really tough race to make it 90 minutes, as you see Terry with a little bit of a quarter spin there on his second hot lap.
Yeah, it's really going to be hard for all our drivers to minimize their mistakes tonight and keep things going the way they want them to. It's going to be an exciting night for sure.
And the other interesting note is that as of right now, obviously drivers still can join until the end of qualifying. As of right now, we have 11 LMP3 drivers. If we don't hit 12, then that A-B class split will actually go away. So we'll be just one full class for the rest of the season. GT3s, obviously, you can see plenty more than 11 in the race right now, but it just so you're aware, unless someone else joins here, that's why you'll see those colors disappear in the break right before the race. Andrew Neri there, provisionally top time in his second lap here with a 1:18.1 for the LMP3 class.
And one thing we shouldn't overlook is that last Sebring's race winner, Ken Huber, is only 0.3 behind Terry Kiger Jr. I think we're going to see another battle to the bitter end here tonight between those two. Those guys have clearly demonstrated themselves as the fastest in GT3 class right now. I'll be excited to see how that race works out.
Yeah, Ken Huber got pole position in that first race, but wasn't able to convert that into points after some incidents that happened earlier in the race. So that'll probably be a drop week for his season, but he really showed his race pace, especially last week, where he overtook Terry Kiger Jr. late due to a mistake by Terry. But those two were duking it out throughout that entire race. Right now, Keith Roycroft with the top time for the LMP3s. I believe he had the fastest time in practice as well, so wouldn't be surprising to see him up here at the top. And would be some good results. Another improvement there for Terry Carter Jr., just a slight improvement on his previous lap, a couple tenths. No one even close to him so far. We'll see if that translates to race pace that's that much faster than everybody. But right now, he's blowing everyone out of the water.
Going back to Keith Roycroft, he had a faster time in practice, clocking in a 1:16.85.
I think it goes to show really how fast these cars can speed up when the fuel starts to drop away and out of the car. So again, they're not running at a full fuel setup here. They're running with 65% fuel. We'll see them pit before the GT3s do as well, which may cause a little bit of traffic. May also influence the strategy on when these guys want to take that pit stop, or the GT3s as well.
Yeah, well, another factor to consider is if they get bunched up in a lot of traffic, and especially from the P3 point of view, it's hard to get around these almost equally as fast GT3 cars on the straightaway. It might benefit our drivers to take an early stop just to get out of that traffic.
Aaron Claybaugh's here. He is in currently 10th, and he's returning as a driver who is a commentator for our open wheel series and was absent last week because he was having a kid. And so Zachariah, I'm sure that he was named after me. He's all home, and Aaron's already back in the seat, ready to race. Right now, Ken Huber 6/10 off of Terry. Not seeing anybody able to compete with that pace. Looks like he's abandoning this lap here. That may have even been his last timed lap. The laps come by pretty quick here. It's a difficult circuit, but it's not very long, just a minute and a quarter or so.
And him choosing the Ferrari like that's a real interesting choice. He said it likes to stretch its legs a lot, where at Sebring that's quite possible, but here at Long Beach there's not a whole lot of straightaway. Even the big straightaway has a dog leg in it, and so we'll have to see if the Ferrari was a smart choice.
Yeah, so far it's been pretty good. He got the pole in Daytona, but like I said, as far as talking about straights, Daytona's the absolute master of straights, maybe only compared to Le Mans, only overshadowed by Le Mans. And here it's not quite that, and a lot of this pace is going to come from the driver themselves more than the car. I think more than anything else, just because you have to have so much confidence and precision around these walls to not make any mistakes. And that's that pit entry there as well. It's a little bit of a weird peel in, and you just have to make sure that you're not about to run into any traffic doing that. It wouldn't surprise me if we see some guys speed in the pit lane as well.
Well, hopefully our drivers tonight will have a pitting in key hot mapped, or they'll sing out over their in-race voice comms.
Christopher Craig there with an improvement of one position there, moves his way up to 5th. And still have not got a 12th LMP3 car with just 1 minute remaining. It looks like it's going to return to a single group class for that. So already it was that every position counted 4 points, but now it's all going to be 4 points in the leaderboard as well. And it'll be exciting to see, is because you want to have a full field of guys competing, and we got some strong competitors up there. And even when you actually look at the standings, it's pretty striped. We have guys all over the place. B class drivers running quite well.
Yeah, it mixes in, and then there's a lot of attrition in these P3 cars. I've noticed at Sebring and Daytona. They're a new car to us. Guys are learning how to drive them. It really is anybody's championship, regardless of A or B class.
Yeah, a couple drivers not able to put in a lap time there. Don McCloy and Zach Nuremberger. I mentioned them earlier as second and third, or third and second respectively, in the LMP3 standings. So we got Nicholas Paletti starting from the back, third and second. They're starting from the back, not putting in any times. A shocking result so far, but we will be right back with you in just a couple minutes as we get these results squared away. All right, and we are back, and our qualifying results, as we did not hit the 12, all one class now. Qualifying results for LMP3, Nick Terrell taking pole position with Keith Roycroft behind him by a couple tenths, and Angineer rounding out the top three. Following them, our overall leader, Brad McCombs, and Christopher Craig in fifth. Nick Paletti starting in sixth, however, he does have a end-of-line penalty, so he will be at the back. Ryan Jeevan is seventh, Mark Dillon Jr. eighth, Steve Cubay ninth, and then Zach Nuremberger and Don McCloy without a time in qualifying.
Heading up our GT3 class, we've got Terry Cowger Jr. on the pole, followed pretty closely by Ken Huber, Adrian Garcia, Tyler Langenberg in fourth, and then Patrick Ripley, a longtime participant in Pony Express, back with us for a special race tonight. In sixth position, we've got Aaron Claybaugh. Seventh, Tony Watson. Eighth, Jeff McDonald. And ninth, the pole sitter for GT3B is Christopher Newby, followed by John Kelly, Daniel Riel in 11th, Kevin Berquist, Daniel Hingley in 13th, Roger Shank in 14th, Abi Vesuvium in 15th, Tim Thompson in 16th, Leonardo Elijah, Tom Atchity, and in 19th, Vernon Margheim.
That's our full field there. Got a strong field between both guys. Terry Cowger Jr. taking a pretty dominant pole. Interested to see how that turns out in race pace, but he certainly has that gap on him here in this qualifying session.
Well, Terry's definitely letting everybody know he's not playing any games tonight.
I know he was a little bit disappointed with that slip that he had a couple weeks ago in that Sebring race. Of course, second place is nothing that most people would be upset with, but Terry always going for the win.
Yep, he's always out there chasing that legendary Dennis Diaz in his mind, I tell you.
Right now, he is the leader for the LMP2 or LMP3s, or sorry, the GT3s, as he won the LMP2. So he's back to the GT3s, current leader. But with only 2 races in the books, obviously can't have pulled out too much of a gap. But that being said, still pretty impressive. He currently is at 113 points. Jeff McDonald, 7 points back at 106. And 4 points behind that is Tyler Langenberg in third. And those three have really kind of set themselves apart so far in the overall points. But, I mean, that's not even getting into drop weeks or any of that jazz, because that's just going to mix things up even more.
Yep, still a little too early in the season to start thinking about the long games and the what ifs. Right now, the fast guys are doing what they do best, and they're getting out front, and they're podium these races.
Yeah, another interesting result that we got from quals there. Despite Terry getting pole in that Porsche, of those top 5, actually 3 of those non-Porsche cars. As you can see, most of the field running that. However, 2 Lamborghinis and a Ferrari showing up there in that overall standing.
Yeah, it's good to see a mix of cars and know that the Porsche isn't just the dominant car. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
We have a couple other representatives in that GT3 class, couple BMWs, 1 Mercedes, everyone, and another Ferrari with Vernon Margheim pairing up with Ken Huber there. So we'll see how they're able to do, especially in race pace as the tire wear becomes more important. But the driver's getting into order here, and that's going to mean, obviously, Nicholas Paletti dropping back behind the whole field here. This is a very short run to the green. They're still getting themselves organized as McCloy. This may have to come around to the next lap. Let's see here.
Race control just said that they are going another pace lap to get the classes split up appropriately.
That makes sense. So ignore this first lap here. This is not an actual hot lap. They're going to be doing a pace lap here and try to get everyone ordered. I think the issue is that the classes had accidentally gridded as one full group, both between the LMP3 and GT3. So Don McCloy and Zach Nuremberg are the 2 guys who did not put in a qualifying time. They were actually at the absolute end of the field. And it just was, I mean, they only had 20 seconds to really get themselves back in order.
Yeah, race control was thinking that it was going to be a full pace lap. Like, it's kind of random how they pick it, but since it wasn't, we're just going to go around again.
Zach Nuremberger is starting in the pits here, which is interesting. I don't know if that was a mistake. I mean, He was around during practice, so he didn't have a qualifying time, but I don't know if they just were all, he made mistakes and had, not had any valid laps. But he's in the pits right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens, because technically with the second pace lap, iRacing is going to put him down a lap before he even comes out the pit.
He's on the pit exit now, so should be able to rejoin. Let's see here, he's coming out. So I'm not sure what happened there to start that, and it looks like Paletti is now dropping down the field there as he does his into line. But yeah, I don't know if there was some sort of technical issue going on with Nürnberger there, but it does look like he's able to rejoin the race. Shouldn't affect any sort of pit strategy too much. I mean, obviously this is going to take us a few minutes into this race, and that's going to help a little bit with the fuel mileage, but it was never on such a razor-thin edge that it should have any effect.
No, I think there's greater factors going to be at work tonight that's going to, hinder these guys more than just their fuel. This extra pace lap really isn't doing anything to them.
Don McCloy there, not aware that he can make his way past this entire GT3 field, as we just saw Zach Nürnberger there do. So he has that ability, has that right to do so if he maybe does not hearing from race control potentially.
Yeah, it sounds like race control is having a hard time getting through him over the radio.
I imagine it's still a green flag go regardless when they come back around. This is about where they started when they started rolling out here on that last lap. So they're going to make their way through again and should be green to go once they get through this section. So they're going to go through Firestone turn and Indy left, and then that tough hairpin, which will potentially be a bit of a traffic stop as we actually get through our first full flag of green racing.
Yeah, it's going to be a real rough start, especially for the GT3s. You could see Terry's back there leaving a pretty big gap. They're still going to have to start in this series of turns before the front stretch.
Nick Terrell leads them through the hairpin as the pole sitter for this LMP3 class. Keith Roycroft and Andrew Neri right behind him trying to take away that lead, but the no passing is going to be through the fountain, so we'll at least see Nick leading the race through that fountain section. After that, everything's go. So it looks like he is accelerating on the green. Nick Terrell leading them through Bridgestone, down into turn one, down into Toyota, and let's see how this goes for everybody. Again, this is now our first green flag of racing. Safely through, coming up to the fountain section. Another tough part of this track. Passing is now legal. Nick Terrell not having to worry about Keith Roycroft behind, as the gap is about 7/10 already. Still keeping it close. And then this corner right here, especially on cold tires, we may see some incidents early in this race.
Yep, P3's got through there smooth. Looks like at least the first two GT3s made it through as well.
So far, we have a couple positions swapped. Looks like Daniel Hingley may be having an issue there. Just checking what happened to him here as he comes through. Oh, that is a big whack on the wall.
Yeah, it looked like he just got into the fountain too hot, got up on that curb, and just upset the car.
Yeah, luckily not including anybody else, so shouldn't be in the line unless there was some sort of collision that we didn't see before that event. But that is a pretty wrecked car, and that's going to be an immediate drive to the pits there.
Yeah, it's definitely not driving well.
Nick Terrell leading him into turn one, and the gap is about half a second now between these two guys. So it's closed up a little bit through the rest of that lap. Certainly Nick not pulling away from the entire field.
Well, it's a little early, especially for the P3s. You know, they want to get their tires warmed up a little bit more before they start slicing and dicing with each other. Especially here, it's going to be so hard to pass each other. It's going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes.
And look how close Terry is to the back of the LMP3 field. You saw him leave a pretty big gap at the start of this race. So it wasn't that he started too close, but he is quite close to the back of them now, and that's going to be a little bit of an issue for him, as it potentially could slow him down any incidents that happen ahead.
Yep, Terry's going to have to make some decisions under pressure. He's got Ken Huber following real close, but it's going to be almost impossible for him to get around a slower LMP3 car.
We have Daniel Hingley and Leonardo Elijah already in the pits. Potentially another driver that may make their way in. This is Tony Watson here. Looks like no damage, just completely backwards.
It looks like he took some damage on the left front there. The nose is a little crushed in. That's that one corner that everybody's been losing traction on in practice. What is that, turn 5 or turn 6, something like that?
Yeah, one of those. I don't know. I don't know which all of that carousel is really called a turn, if it's all one. But and actually up at the front of our LMP3s, we can see right there. That is yeah, Keith Roycroft. That was or Keith Roycroft. That was Nick Paletti that we actually saw on screen in there. Keith Roycroft letting this entire GT3 field by. Let's check this incident that he had just had. Oh, he hits the wall on turn 1, goes too deep.
Yeah, that's got to be heartbreaking. He had such fast pace tonight.
And then the car in front, I think that was the number 16, the 19 of Steve Cubey hitting the wall on the exit, and a couple drivers behind getting involved in that traffic jam. That was Zach Nurnberger and Nicholas Paletti at least. A lot of drivers involved in that, and kind of separate incidents. Oh, and that's a toe.
Yeah, that breaks the heart.
Derek Geiger Jr. just made his way past an LMP3 on track, and look at that traffic jam that we have back there. The gap between these guys is absolutely nothing right now.
Well, that might have been what Terry wanted to do, is maybe get a P3 between him and Ken Huber to keep him busy while he can run away.
Very difficult for the drivers back there. And Zach Nurnberger sideways. He's going to have to wait for this entire field to go through, as he has absolutely nowhere to go. He's just fallen down the field and has no gap to rejoin. Finally gets through now, just ahead of John Kelly. Doesn't look like he has any damage, but lost, probably 15 seconds there.
Oh, easily. That stuff's got to hurt. I mean, you can't pull out in front of the other traffic. These guys are racing too. Hats off to Zach and Keith both for keeping that in mind instead of panicking and trying to rejoin the race as quick as they can.
Yeah, luckily not impacting anybody else. Tyler Langenberg here has multiple dings on that car. Rear left, front right, front left. Definitely has been involved in some stuff early, but he's still there in 5th. He's only down 1 position, and he's close to Patrick Ripley here, trying to get that spot back. And I have to wonder what incident kind of caused that earlier in this race, but I can imagine a few.
I have a feeling our Long Beach race tonight, Zach, is going to wind up being like a NASCAR short track race where bodywork's going to be optional by the end.
Well, that front bumper for Patrick Ripley in front as well, also a little bit caved in. Doesn't look like he has as much cosmetic damage as Langenberg does. Christopher Craig just made the pass on Brad McCombs. Oh, Brad McCombs, an incident. I don't know if anyone's going to survive this race here.
Well, we've seen it before from Brad. He's come from behind. It looked like he just got a little too greedy on the throttle, maybe. Just kind of unloaded the rear end.
He was pretty quick into that corner, too. It sounded like a pretty sizable ding, but I think he got away without really any rear wing damage to that car. But he has damage to the front right that was not from that incident there as well.
Yeah, it does look a little crushed in.
Kyle Langenberg here trying to keep it close, but Aaron Claybaugh right behind, keeping it even closer, 3/10 between these guys.
Yeah, Aaron Claybaugh is definitely not slow, and he's one of those drivers. He'll think about what he's doing. If he sees something that he doesn't want to get into, he won't get in. He'll wait for the right moment to take these guys down.
Claybaugh has had a couple of strong races so far to start the season, given that he typically, in the first 2 events, had qualified a little bit out of position, qualified lower than his race pace really was. Gained a lot of positions in both races. And this was his last attempt here to make his way into that A-Class, and did so in that final transfer spot. So he is an A-Class driver for our GT3s for the rest of the season here.
Yeah, it was good to see him catch the A on the last opportunity. Congratulations.
Nicholas Paletti here having to start at the back of the field, already up to 5th, and trying to get Steve Cubey here in front for 4th place. How's that car? Brad McCombs up in front. So McCombs was backwards, or at least sideways, but still able to rejoin the race in 3rd place. So that field spread already showing its mark on this race, and Nicholas Paletti here trying to get in their spot. That's the race leader, Terry Cogger Jr. back there. He's behind Nicholas Paletti for position in what would be 6th overall in the race.
Yeah, Terry's having a great run tonight. If he can just keep it going, I don't see anything that's going to be able to stop him.
The LMP3s might be able to stop him. He's unfortunately having to race a whole different class of cars as he continues to try to polo out that gap behind. And he's got about 2 seconds to Ken Huber, but he would certainly like to have more than that. Right there, let's see, Jeff McDonald just made the move on Aaron Claybaugh in that GT3 class. Claybaugh very close to Ripley, but hits the wall on that hairpin.
Yeah, that little drag on the inside wall was all it took for him to sacrifice his exit speed and just allowed Jeff McDonald to get right on by.
Oh, and that's Nicholas Paletti backwards.
There it is again.
Right on that crest.
There it is again, that turn 5. I think that's 5.
And he had no damage, but in trying to get off the racing line, reverses into the wall. And unlike what we saw from Brad McCombs just a minute or two ago, did blow the entire rear wing off that car. That's definitely going to be a meatball for him, I assume, and a pit on this lap, unfortunately.
We'll have to see if he comes into pit. I don't imagine he would want less downforce at this track.
Gary out here keeping up with John Kelly in front. He is up 1 position, trying to make another. We haven't had any huge gainers so far in the GT3 class. Oh, Jeff McDonald, potentially an incident. That's Zach Nurnberger, collision with Dan Real as he was just in the middle of that racing line.
Yeah, there was nowhere for Zach to go. He couldn't back up and knowingly do it safely, so.
Unable to find exactly what happened to Jeff McDonald here. Let's see. Zach Nurnberger passed him for position. It might have something to do with this as we come into this right-hander at the end of the longest straight. Both cars getting into each other. Tough call on that one, but that's going to affect both their races. McDonald doesn't seem to have come away too bad from it on damage, but did lose a few positions there, and Nurnberger is in the pits to get that repaired.
Yeah, and I thought I saw earlier that Paletti had entered to get his damage repaired as well.
Yeah, he's on the pit exit now, so rejoining that race, not too dissimilar of a situation from what he had at the very start, where he had to start from the back, and unfortunately, he's got a larger gap now to make up, so we'll see how that plays out during the rest of this race. This battle continues to rage on, though, in the GT3 field for that 4th place position between Patrick Ripley and Tyler Langenberg.
Another interesting thing to note is that Terry Cowger Jr. and Ken Huber have worked themselves up to P5 and 6 overall. That means there's only 4 P3 cars ahead of those two.
Yeah, and a lot of the clips, looking at those LMP3 leaders, you can, at least the LMP3 guys up there in like that midfield, you can see those GT3s all over the place. And it's probably been a real headache for both classes to have to deal with that. And I think that's kind of been evidenced so far in just looking at those gaps that we're seeing in both classes. Nobody really close to their competitors, and I think a lot of the times they're separated by a car in a different class.
Well, that's the thing with these P3s and the GT3s is not one car has necessarily a huge top speed advantage over the other, like we saw last season with the LMP2s and the GT3s, where they just blow by them like they're standing still. This makes racing a whole lot more difficult for both class drivers.
Yeah, here's the overall standings. As you can see, Steve Cubey there in fourth, and the car behind him for position is Terry Geiger Jr. And not just him, but actually now all the top 5 of the GT3s are ahead of the rest of the LMP3 field as well. So they're all over the place, but there are a lot of LMP3s at the back right now, as a lot have had incidents early in this race, and it's just been a difficult run for a lot of them.
That's kind of interesting. Steve Cubey, didn't he start all the way at the back, or was that Don McCloy?
Don McCloy did,
Okay.
and he's been making his way through without too much incident, and that is Brad McCombs colliding with Daniel Real into turn 1.
Oh, he's going to have to pit this time.
Oh, and Terry Geiger Jr. That's Terry Geiger Jr.
Oh.
And Ken Huber was involved as well. Ken Huber, as we see this replay, just so we see what happened coming down to turn 1, we just saw that incident that happened ahead of him. Terry hitting the side of Dan Real. Ken Huber hitting him, but to a lesser extent.
Well, Ken Huber just kind of came around that corner. I don't think he saw Real until it was too late.
Yeah, Langenberg narrowly able to get on those brakes and avoid a collision as well. So up at the front, that means Garcia now up to second as he made his way through both drivers and Patrick Ripley up into third. That's Brad McCombs into the pits. The damage to Terry Geiger Jr., seeing if that's caught. Oh, that is really bad, actually. I'm surprised he didn't come into the pit stop there. I think he's just kind of trying to hobble until he gets to that pit window to where he's at least making the same amount of stops as he normally would. But the first really big, I mean, it wasn't really a mistake, but the first really big negative incident for Terry Geiger Jr.'s season so far.
Yep, usually he's not a man that makes mistakes. I don't really think that was his fault. He just kind of came around into something that had already happened. And speaking of his damage, if he can limp it around and still keep a decent lap time, he can easily go into the pit window and take his repair then. It won't hurt him too much or too badly. Not as bad as taking an additional pit stop.
Yeah, the GT3s are at 75% fuel. So I would imagine that would mean that he would have already been able to come in for that splash and dash, if I'm doing the math right in my head at least, but potentially not. And that incident also now, because of that up there, we now have just 3 drivers in front of Terry here in the LMP3 class. It's Terrell, Craig, and Cubey, as it was Brad McCombs, who was involved in that Daniel Real incident, taking him back to the back of the field now.
Yeah, that's a tough break, but we've seen Brad come back from the end before. Can he do it here? I don't know, but I'll be interested to see.
On that lap, Terry was actually faster than Vahil behind. Obviously lost the time in that incident lap, and on this last lap that he had with all of that damage, still 0.3 faster.
Maybe he knocked some parts off and got a little bit of weight savings.
We saw last season, the exactly which driver it was is slipping my mind, but a driver had blown off the entire rear wing in their GT3 car and were setting the fastest laps on the track. They had found some sort of hack and unfortunately got that repaired when they come to the end. Patrick Ripley flashing his lights and hitting the wall as well.
Now, Patrick's not a racer who's afraid to gamble. If he thinks he's got somebody ahead of him, he's definitely going to let him know.
Yeah, most of this race so far in this early bit, he'd been defending from Aaron Claybaugh, but now he's on the attack for Vahil. Side by side, coming into the right-hander at the end of this straight, and it looks like he's going to be ahead. Vahil not fighting him too much in this section.
That outbroke him, got it done in the turn there.
Yeah, Firestone turn, probably a popular passing opportunity, especially as that turn onto Seaside Way can really be a separator in pace in this lap, because it just takes so much confidence to go through there and just stay inches away from that wall. We already saw Ripley kind of scraping the walls earlier to no negative effect to the car, just really feeling where he can put it.
It's like I said earlier, this track is a game of inches, and Ripley is taking them all.
Jeff McDonald trying to make the move on Christopher Newby here. Not able to into turn 1. Very wide for Newby. Close to hitting that wall, but keeps it inside. It's a new paint job for Chris Newby there as well.
Almost didn't recognize him.
Zach Nurnberger in the LMP3 behind, trying to make up positions from at least one early incident in this race that we saw. And it's unfortunate he's got 50 seconds to Paletti ahead now.
It's going to be a tough climb back for all these P3 guys who have had incidences early on. It's just so hard to pass. It's gonna be an uphill battle. But I think the drivers that, show stick-to-itiveness, they'll get through it all right.
Yeah, it's even worse. That's not even for position there, actually, for Nurnberger. He's a lap behind these guys, and he's trying to reclaim that lap as he makes his way up and just trying to survive through the rest of this race. But McDonald's certainly for position on Newby in front. Newby is a B-class driver, is the leader of the B-class drivers, and has a few driver buffer behind him to Roger Schenck. But all the points matter regardless, and that's certainly on the mind of both of these guys. Tony Watson making the move on Tim Thompson back here. Tony Watson, an early incident in this race. Back in it, you can see a little bit of damage to the front left, and another pass made there into that right-hander.
Tony's a hell of a driver. As soon as he gets calmed down, I'm sure he'll work his way back up
Patrick
front.
Ripley, and more others as well. So let's see what happens here. Patrick Ripley on the right-hander after the fountain section. Let's see, he's going to hit the bump. And Vaheel colliding with him. Ken Huber colliding. Tyler Langenberg colliding. Aaron Claybaugh, the first driver to make it through without being involved in that incident there.
Oh, that's so rough. Doesn't look like Patrick's car is doing too well after that.
No, that car's definitely toast, and it's made worse by, look at that steering that he has to have on it.
Yeah, I don't know if limping it to the pits is a hot idea.
I think that he does call it quits here as he stops on the track. Let's see if we can see him. Patrick Ripley in the pits now. So, yeah, that was a tow. That's Tyler Langenberg, or Ken Huber, sorry. Ken Huber running in the pits. He got some damage from that incident. Vaheel and Langenberg, though, keeping it out on the track. And Terry, despite that early incident, is still out there and now actually has a 7-second gap to second. So amazing how that falls into place. But despite his hood flying around there, he's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, body work is optional tonight.
Aaron Claybaugh's definitely a guy to watch here, as he is the first guy in this group. He's got two guys in front of him. First guy in this group that doesn't have any damage to the car. Does have the LMP3 of Zach Nurnberger mixing things up for these three, but that seemed like a pretty heavy whack for both of those two guys in front.
The cars ahead, too, Tyler Langenberg and Adrian Garcia have also taken hits before that, where Aaron's car is pretty clean. It could benefit him in the long run. All he's got to do is sit there and not let those guys run away from him too bad, and he could have a shot.
Tony Watson trying to make up some more positions. All things considered, one of the cleaner looking cars out there, despite a little bit of body work damage to that front left, but trying to make that pass on Abu Vishvasham here for 10th overall in the GT3 class. Coming down Seaside Way, looks like he's going to make that pass attempt into Firestone. Let's see if he gets it done on the brakes. He's a little bit behind. This is going to be a little bit tougher. Certainly, I'll be fighting back in this one. Tony Watson on the outside. All the long way around, and I think he's going to make it work because he's going to be the inside here for the hairpin. Claims that turn, and what a move there for Tony Watson as he continues to carve his way through that field.
Great racing by both competitors. They left each other just enough space to keep it interesting.
A lot of guys up there have now started to gain positions through this race. Roger Schenck's up 5, and he's our second-place runner for the B class. Tom Atchity back there, he's up 5. A lot of guys up 4. Tim Thompson, Abu Vishvasham, as we just saw there, and Kevin Berquist and Chris Newby as well, all up 4 positions in this race. The LMP3 class obviously has really been turned on its head. Nick Terrell still leading with a 5-second gap, but Christopher Craig's up to 2nd. He started in 5th. Cubey started in 9th, and he's up to 3rd. And McCloy not only started in 11th, but he started behind the entire GT3 field, and he is now in 4th place, just 16 seconds back from the lead.
Well, like Don McCloy showed us a couple weeks ago in Sebring, you got to keep an eye on him because he just appears out of nowhere. Here he is, having started all the way in the back, now in 4th.
Nürnberger, they're putting in actually the purple lap for that LMP3 class here, 22 minutes in. I actually thought Jeff McDonald would have a better run in the turn 1 there, as he's really trying to hound Newbie here in front and try to make that move happen, but just didn't have that drive out of that hairpin. But as you can just hear in the background, the slightest faint shimmers of cars scraping up against the walls throughout this entire track. No way to know who's doing it because I think everybody's hitting the wall about now, but certainly hearing a couple incidents out there.
Jeff McDonald's he's gonna have to get a better exit out of a couple of these corners if he wants a run on Newbie. He's able to keep the pace real close to him, and he's in striking distance, but he's just gonna have to, give it a little extra in going into one of these corners.
Yeah, Firestone right there has generally been the favored passing opportunity so far in this race. Also, while we're talking about purple laps, Don McCloy had just set the purple lap by just a little bit over Zach Nürnberger, and obviously evidenced by how much positions he's gained. But then Zach Nürnberger claiming it back again, and just breaking into that next set of times. So let's see what our best lap times are so far for these guys. As you can see, purple there, only guy in the 16s for Zach Nürnberger. Terry Kiger Jr. with the fastest lap in the race, a 19.4 in the GT3 class. And for the most part, we're seeing a lot of mix-up in the LMP3 class, but it does look like the GT3s are mostly sorted outside of the guys who we have out. And actually, Ken Huber out of this race, so I don't know if he maybe did not check his fast repair when he came, because we saw him pull into the pits. So I think he may have forgotten to have that checked. And well, yeah, that just noticed that now, but that's a big development for a guy who's had a strong first couple races, or at least in pace wise. That might be 2 drop weeks there in the first 3 weeks.
You don't want to take your drop weeks in the first 3 weeks. That hurts. But at the same time, Ken's a smart driver. He knows that, there's lots of racing left in the season, and having to pit an additional pit stop so early on in the race really isn't going to do you any favors. He might have just called it quits.
Yeah, you have to imagine he had enough damage he was not able to carry it around. And we see some big smoke up there ahead of these guys. I think that was Zach Nürnberger, as we just saw an incident flagged here. Yeah, he's coming down into turn 1. Has the fastest lap in the LMP3 class. Is he potentially going a little too fast?
Oh, yeah, it looked like the rear end just got away from him.
Yeah, luckily that's a simple enough rejoin, as he's facing just the right way to get back onto the track. But something that we have seen a couple times in the LMP3 so far this season, we saw it in the LMP2 probably more frequently, was hammering on those brakes. Just sometimes the rear end snaps out.
Yeah, what it comes down to in those prototype cars is that aerodynamic load bubble moving around on the cars. When you get down under a certain speed, all the weight just shifts off the rear wing and onto the front, and it can really ruin your day.
Don McCloy there joining Nürnberger in the 16 group, as he puts in a 16.976, and that is not just, it's competitive with Zach Nürnberger, but beyond that, nobody else is even close. Is that potentially too much? Is that too much of a stress on the tire? We've heard that the tire wear really is nothing from at least some of the guys who have done well so far in the season, and we've heard them in the interviews. But that's a whole second faster than Nick Terrell up there at the front.
What I think is going on is that Zach Nürnberger and Don McCloy were able to get in a bubble in the traffic to where they could just have nobody around them and really use all the track, get that clean air, and get their speeds up to really what they should be. Now, Nick is obviously putting in very consistent laps, lap after lap after lap, compared to these one hot lap specials. But if they can keep that clean air, they could start moving up.
Yeah, look at McCloy there on that track map. It looks like he's got a contagious disease or something. He's the only, everybody is busy with something, and he has nobody even remotely close to him. he's running fourth. It's not like he's last place and he's just got nobody close to him. He's got 9 seconds ahead to the next car and probably 10 or 11 seconds behind.
If I was in McCloy's position, I'd think about staying there at least until the first pit stop. I mean, you can't ask for much better than that here.
Yeah, it's been he at one. I mean, just when I last mentioned it, he was 14 seconds off of Steve Cubet. He's now brought that down to 8, and with this kind of pace advantage, I mean, a second faster through sector 1, half a second faster through sector 2, just on this lap here. Has that capability of easily making it into the podium positions. And who knows? I mean, we're only half an hour in. He could be up there in the top 2 at the end of this race.
He very well could be, Zach.
Right now, however, for the GT3 class, Terry Kiger Jr. still looking strong there, not just in first overall, but or first for the G3s, but 5th in the overall standings, with Andrew Neri behind him. Yeah, and actually, that I should also mention, just to hit back on the Don McCloy, he also has that benefit of 38 seconds behind to the next driver, so he doesn't even have to worry about anybody behind him. He can just focus on just pure pace right now.
And that's a really great thing at a track like this, when you can get kind of left alone to do your job. You don't got to worry about, defending other classes, defending same class cars. You can just put your head down and drive, and it really is nice. It'll help you relax a little bit and keep you focused.
Right now dealing with some traffic. It's not poor position, however. You see there, that's Brad McCombs, who did stay in this race. We saw a couple big early incidents for him, but he's just a couple seconds off of Zach Nuremberger there right in front. And ideally, able to make up another spot here. Brad understanding that every position matters when we come down to the end, because he's our leader. He's our season leader. And not only is he our season leader, that's second right up the road there with Zach Nuremberger.
All the points are going to count. Brad knows that. I think Zach knows it too. These guys are going to stay out no matter what. They're not going to give up easy.
At least in that incident there, not looking like the LMP3 having too much of an issue getting by. It does seem like it really gets a good drive on the acceleration in that corner, but in some of these corners, there's really not much of a pace difference between the two classes.
No, there's really not, and that's what makes a track like this so difficult. The classes being so evenly matched here, they might as well all be in P3s or GT3s.
Paletti here trying to get up to Ryan Jeevan, and if Paletti's able to get this spot, it would be him returning to where he qualified in before having to serve that EOL, and obviously the spin that we saw take off the rear wing of this car, but has that opportunity here passing Ryan Jeevan, and Andrew Neri's not much further up the road either. He could get his way into the top 5 soon.
Yeah, now Nick's got his incidents out of the way. He's calmed down. He should be able to get his head down and drive.
Tom Hatchety coming out of the pits has an incident here. Wonder if he just misses. I think he's just letting traffic through safely.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
Paletti has not had, he's had a lot of pace in the season so far. I think he would prefer some better results. As it stands, currently 6th in the standings with 90 points overall, 18 points off Brad McCombs. But of course, Brad himself not having a dream race so far with a couple early incidents, and Zach Nuremberger also having some issues as well. So despite not the greatest start to this race for Paletti, has that capability of clawing back some points to the leaders. Paul Boyle's not here too. I just noticed that. Paul Boyle, who's 4th place, he's not here at this race.
This whole gaggle ahead of Nick here is going to be a challenge for both class drivers. They're, with the pace being equal as it is, these guys are going to have their work cut out for them, not only fighting each other, but fighting the other class.
That was Tom Atchety again there on the outside of turn 1. I don't know if he came out of the pits, but it looked like a similar situation there as what we had just saw from the previous lap.
I think he was getting out of the way of these guys. He knows he's not on their lap. He knows that he's not racing them, so good racing on his part.
Letty clearly playing it safe so far. Had a couple opportunities to do a pretty risky send on Jeevan there and just kind of letting the race breathe a little bit. We're just now past that half-hour mark and still an hour to go, and we've seen nobody. I mean, I don't know if really anybody has had a clean race so far.
Other than maybe Nick Terrell.
Yeah, good point. He's had a quiet, clean race up there at the front, and last we saw, had a pretty clean car. Avi Vishwasham here may have an incident. I think this is turn 1.
Looks like he just overshot it.
Yeah, better than actually crashing. Dale Hingley also, though, with an incident. Oh, that was a much bigger hit, though. Oh, and he hits the wall again.
Yeah, the car was looking a little squirrely coming out of there. Yep, it's definitely damaged.